In the Lateness of the World, by Carolyn Forche.
Isn't that a beautiful cover?
Yes, it is gorgeous. Yes.
And do you know what kind of birds?
They look like sandhill cranes or egrets.
They're egrets.
Egrets.
And I just kind of looked up the photographer who did this cover. And it's a Hungarian photographer. Egrets, the great egret was an endangered species in Hungary, but now it's an environmental success story because they protected its habitat, and it went from only 6 pairs to now 3,000 nesting pairs of these.
Wow. That's
Wow.
great.
What's an interesting implications as the cover of the book then?
Yeah, it is.
Huh.
It's difficult to talk about this book because I thought it was incredible, but the way she approached the subject, all the little details, and the details were not ordinary at all. I kept underlining and but unfortunately I can't write that way. I wish I did.
No, you write Helga's way, and that's the way you need to write.
Yeah.
You mean you actually scarred up your book by underlining things instead of doing the yellow Post-it notes?
No.
No.
I don't understand you people.
Like this.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
this.
me too.
Yeah.
Me too, Helga.
I just have never been able to bring myself to do that. I need to. I mean, I should, but
Yeah.
To me, that shows that I love the book so much.
Yeah.
It's mine, and I am putting what I love about this person's work. That's what underlining means to me.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
And afterwards, I go back and look at all the underlined phrases and words, and so that they really sink in, so that I can remember some of those. Yes.
They almost create a kind of stepping stone, other narrative or arc to the book. When you do that, I think, I say this as someone who doesn't underline, but I do try to keep track of things. And this book has a lot of fantastic lines.
Oh, yes.
Lord, yes.
Anything you want to point us to there, Helga, and your underlining?
Well, there was one poem on page 25 that really spoke to me, and it's actually a war poem. It's called Letter to City Under Siege, and it was the way she approached the subject through the book of a friend that a friend had given her. And she begins talking about what might be in that book and all the details of that town and what happened to it. And she actually walks with that friend through the town so she can get at other details. I mean, it was just captivating, I thought. And I really think she did that, probably that kind of approach with all of her poems, that I don't think she ever came out directly beginning a poem she always chose something that was extraordinary, I think, in order to get at the subject. And I probably should be more detailed than that, but it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, Helga, when you're saying this about that poem, Letter to a city under siege. And it goes so far into the poem, and then it turns. It says, "Friend, absent one, I can tell you that your tunnel is still there. Mud-walled and
Yeah.
hallowed of earth, dug for smuggling oranges into the city. Oranges,
Yeah.
bright
Oh,
as winter moons by the barrow load.
yeah.
So let's walk further up the street." Yeah, that's a great way to deepen the poem.
Yeah. It's and I loved the part where she said that I wanted to give your notes back to you to be printed in another language, nor yours or mine, but a tongue understood by children who make bulletproof vests out of cardboard. I
Yeah.
just thought, oh, wow.
That's where my Post-it note is. And
That's where my
that-
underline is.
Yeah. Yeah, that particular phrase, I had thought that the phrase of a tongue understood by children, not yours or mine, but a tongue understood by children who make bulletproof vests out of cardboard, that I don't know, it was like the entirety of the book in some way is trying to do something like that. What is the role of language, and how does it shield us if possible? And maybe there's a different kind of tongue we might bring into the world.
And I think most of her poems also are about some kind of war, either a war between countries or an internal war, or a war we have with other people. And I think that was interesting. If the poems had been written differently, I might have said, well, why is she talking so much about war? You know, was she really in it, or is she qualified to talk that much about war? But because of the way she writes about it, I think it's very believable.
Yeah. And I think as in her past, especially like the book, The Country Between Us, where she
Yeah.
was a witness
To
to
that.
the Civil War in El Salvador, and wrote that book of poems based on her experiences there,
Mhm.
that she does have experience and does have that authority, I think, to speak on that subject. I mean, she has coined the term poetry of witness, of seeing it and exploring it and bringing it to attention. And I think one of the primary lines in this book, there is nothing that cannot be seen.
Yeah.
Like that line, which is in the very last poem of the book. There's nothing that cannot be seen. And she is showing us time after time, you know, in all these poems.
Yeah, while you're mentioning that, Sandy, that last line of that final poem, "Open then to the coming of what comes."
Yeah.
You know, the absence of punctuation in this poem, for the most part, compared to the rest of the book, and so I was lingering with that this afternoon while I'm sitting on my back porch and the nice weather. But thinking about how am I really supposed to understand the word "open" there? Is it a command? Open then to the coming of what comes, or is it more like an adjective, I guess? And there is nothing that cannot be seen. Open then to the coming of what comes. It as you see it, it is open. I don't know. There's subtle differences in the meaning there, but I'm not exactly sure which one, or maybe I'm supposed to have them both. Alice, you're on mute, so if you need to speak up and tell us.
Well, the one that I sort of played with was before that, it was, there is nothing that cannot be seen, or there is nothing that cannot be seen. And it's completely different.
Oh, yeah.
You
Well,
mean
all
the
of-
line break, there is nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
means.
you go, there is nothing. And then is it a continuation? There's nothing that cannot be seen? Meaning you can see everything? Or there's nothing? And then in the positive, that cannot be seen.
Yeah, kind of like
Would
Wallace
they-
Stevens.
Yeah, you can't see nothing. Nothing is that something that cannot be seen. So it worked both ways, and that was something that I kept playing back and forth with. And then the open, yeah, I kept flipping it between a verb and an adjective. Oh,
Well, even the beginning of that poem, I mean, between the line breaks and the epigraph, there are so many ways to take this poem. I mean, I brought from despair a basket so small, my love, that it might have been woven of willow. I mean, I've been trying to parse that sentence. I'm just like, I don't know, you know, there's the open, you know, I was focusing on the basket being woven of willow, which means it's bendable and there's open spaces. So it might not necessarily be good as a basket, but it's, you know, one of those things like trees that bend don't break.
Yeah.
But it, from his despair. And so I'm like, oh, you know, and then I read this poem and I think, I don't, you know, I'm not sure where it's going. I mean, I think just like the last book we did last month, the poems just get better and better. I mean, I've got so many more lines and markings on all the later poems in this book, just like I did the last book, that it's like, wow, you know.
yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, to end on this is just kind of a mind-blowing thing. Like Helga and Jeff were talking earlier, it's, you start talking about one thing and then suddenly you find yourself deeper into something else, and you've enjoyed the turn, but then you realize, hey, wait a minute, I've left something back there that we haven't finished discussing yet.
Yeah, it seems she goes into language so deep that it's difficult to follow all
But
the
there's-
way.
Yeah, and the language though isn't difficult language. It's
No.
not obfuscatory language. It is completely like ordinary, you know, language, but done so beautifully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love in this poem, there's these not yets, not yet, no longer, not yet. And then open then to the coming of what comes. Okay, so now is time, you know, that the time is finally, what has come is come. But before, in the beginning of the poem, it's not yet, not yet. I just thought that was quite lovely.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I'm trying to find your discussion here about language reminds me, I was thinking it was in the first half of the book. There was I think it's the closing of a poem where the syntax was so intricate and really kind of marvelous. And I'm not seeing it. I must not have put a Post-it note on it.
If you had underlined it, you would
If
have.
you
I
had
know,
marked
I
it or
know.
highlighted it, perhaps.
But I mean,
This
it was really
probably-
amazing.
not the one you were thinking of, but I kept reading and I found so many different pronunciations on page 57. That there were two different Portuguese pronunciations I found. There was an English pronunciation that was completely different. But somewhere when I was swirling around with that title word, I found something that said it meant joyful sorrow. And I liked that. And I liked the way that it had so many things. It had words, it had breath, it had stone, it had rain. At night, there's a light sound of wings brushing the walls. Not now is what it sounds like. Or two other words. But they are the same passerines as live in the stone cave, in the stone eaves, as forage in the air toward night. To see them, one must not be looking. And that whole idea of to see them, one must not be looking. Just that was wonderful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because there is nothing that cannot be seen.
Right.
You see, I got hung
I
up
keep
on
hearing a
it.
little echo of John Lennon. There's
Oh.
nothing. Actually, I found the poem I'm talking about. It's like a room on page 34. And I'd almost love to read the entirety of the poem. I won't do that, but let me read the first few lines, and then I'm gonna skip to the end. But even look at the opening lines of this poem and the interruptions, like syntactical interruptions that happen. There is on the wall a scroll of rice paper and silk, where 60 years ago a monk, after grinding bamboo ash and the glue of fish bones into a stick, rubbed the stick into stone and water, brushing a moment of light from mind to paper. It's a great sentence. I mean, it's obviously in lines, but it's a fantastic, well-crafted sentence. I remember one of my professors in graduate school saying, the fiction writers get everything. They get the movie deals, they get the big book deals. I think he even mentioned, other things. And I was like, that's probably inappropriate. But he said, at least the poets, we have to write a sentence at least as strong as the fiction writers do. Just because we're writing in lines, still have to write a sentence. But look at the very ending of this poem. And I love the whole poem, but the ending, I'm going to go over on page 35. And well, actually, let me look at the very bottom of 34.
Yeah.
Beginning with that participial phrase, warning us against attributing to objects the internal sensations they occasion, such as joy at finding the scroll after taking shelter in a shop on an afternoon lit with fire pots, or relief that the rug, soaked in the floodwaters that later destroyed the house, was, in the end, saved by the snow it collected on a winter night. Its memory and the red of its insects intact, along with, by coincidence, the dowry chest, the saint, the Chinese couple, Buddhas, and blue eggs, coffee service, and books chosen at random, as our moments are, ours and the souls of others, who glimmer beside us for an instant, here by chance and radiant with significance. God, I got chills just reading that. It's just so fantastic. And I love so much of what is happening with the cataloging, dowry chest, the saint. But it's that moment when she gets to, and books chosen at random, as our moments are.
Yeah.
What a move. What a fantastic. I don't even know how to explain what's happening there, but I mean, it's comparison, but I wouldn't get there. That's why I read poetry. Like, oh, thank you. You gave me a mind I didn't have.
Yeah.
And then she's not done. It's as our moments are, ours and the souls of others who glimmered, and then you get this relative clause, who glimmer beside us for an instant, here by chance and radiant with significance. I even love the echoing sounds of chance, significance,
Mhm.
beautiful sounds, beautiful structure. Just a well-made sentence, but fantastic poem.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put a instead of one of the small, I'm putting a big yellow post-it note right there. I've got small ones on the other pages, but
I was going to ask you what you do, because what I do is like I have regular underlining, and then I
Oh.
have, you know, wavy underlining.
Wavy.
That's very important.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
And
I
those were the
underline that
same
too.
lines that you read. I mean, that I was
Yeah.
just like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh. you
I
know.
underline that too, those last 3 lines of that poem.
Yep.
Very cool.
That's wonderful. I mean, you know, what was it Bill Brown said one time, that you can give a poem to a classroom full of 4th graders and ask them, like, where's the hot spot in this poem? And they'll all go to the same place, he said. I don't know if that's true. Maybe he's just telling that story, but here we are. We've all read this poem, but we were all drawn to the same powerful, and we know that that language at that moment is ratcheted up or it's heightened. And it's, I think, partly because it's not just the syntactical difference of it, but it's also, you know, that thing we read poetry for, wisdom. You know, it just has wisdom to it. And when we encounter it, we do the squiggly lines.
the large sticky notes.
Yeah, large sticky notes.
I mean, it just creates magic. I mean, there are poems that people write and they use these big words thinking that that's either making it poetry or that makes it sound more important than it is. And when I read this, it's not the word, it's the way she puts it together. And that to me is so much more powerful, because I don't have to stop and look up every other, go, wait, what is that? And look it up. Not, you know, I'm not opposed to looking up words, learning new words, but, you know, whole books filled with that are just difficult to read. And just this is magical, the way she takes the language, and like you said, the syntax is what is working the magic.
Yeah. And she also has a poem where she basically just lists a bunch of stuff. It's called Light of Sleep. And she talks about the library of night, and she just keeps listing things
Oh, yeah.
that,
In
that are
alphabetical
in
order.
the night, all the way down.
And you noticed it was in alphabetical order too, right?
It's incredible. It's incredible. No, I didn't, KB. No, I know you would notice that right away.
No, I didn't notice it right away. I was about halfway through the list and I went, wait a minute, what's happening here? And then I went back again. I didn't even finish it. And I went back and I was like, oh my gosh, she's got the whole alphabet here.
Yeah.
So it's one of those ABC Darien poems, but
Yeah.
not.
Wow. Wow. Well, I
Again,
find
it is an
incredible.
Addisonarian.
Well,
It-
I don't I expect those to be like at the beginning of the lines. So once again, she's just syntactically made it different, which is the beauty of it.
And
Yeah,
even
there are lots of
though
ways to do
it's even though it's a listing, it's so very interesting with the kind of stuff that she comes up with. I mean, it's just incredible, even to the very last.
Yeah, which I have underlined, by the way.
Anyway.
The whole dancing,
Yeah,
flying,
no,
or
I
dying in
couldn't
the world.
underline it, but
Yeah.
I mean, we could just go through it, but we
Mm.
may not want to do that.
Yeah, isn't the premise of this really beautiful too? That opening in the library of night, from the darkness of ink on paper, there's
Yeah.
a whispering heard book to book.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. As I sit here with my 5,000 poetry books, so they're all whispering behind me. Can y'all hear them?
Yeah, there's a hum.
Actually, I wonder if do y'all know this book of hers, The Angel History? It's
No.
whispering to this one, and
Oh,
and the Blue Hour. You know, that's
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
beautiful book
oh,
too.
wow.
And the others, I've got some of her others. I guess are somewhere on one of these shelves.
That is why you write a poem a day, Jeff, because you hear their whispering and they're filling you at night and you have to
Yeah,
write something.
All these voices in my head. Well, but
Did you guys see Jeff's poem about books? I'd swear he wrote it for me.
okay. It's in my Hard and Daily probably in the last month or so.
Yeah, it was my most favorite poem so far this month. And I do read a lot of poetry.
Well, but picking up on this idea of whispering though, she does have lots of references, like there's Renee Char and other poets. So there's a whispering going on already in her work. I was wondering, I think I looked in the back and I didn't see anything. The poem we mentioned earlier, letter, no, that was that the one? Yeah, letter to a city under siege. I wondered if that was Zbigniew Herber, the Polish
Yeah,
poet.
big new heaven. Yeah,
Do you know who I'm talking about?
yes.
Well, this isn't it's his selected, but one of his books is titled "Report from a Besieged City." Am I remembering that correctly? That's like 30
I don't know.
30 years ago in graduate school, but
I don't know.
I loved his loved that particular book as Mr. Kajito. Report from the Besieged City and Other Poems. That was the title of one of his books. So that's my echo when I was reading that poem. I didn't come to the conclusion that that's the echo or reference, but I wondered. I could be easily convinced that that's who she has in mind. I do like the worldliness is not necessarily the right word, but a kind of global mentality, a global.
Yeah.
In fact, it's really only in the second half of the book, except for maybe one poem in the beginning, but as you read along, most of the poems, unlike so many other people's poems are about themselves. Her poems seem to be about others and other places.
Yeah.
I suspected, like again, we've only spent a month with this book, so we don't know every little in and out. But I think the poem "The Crossing" was that. I suspected that might be a family member or maybe a grandmother that she's writing about, and I don't know if that's
Page 34.
no, "The Crossing" is on page 14.
Oh,
But prior to that, you've got "Museum of Stones," which is just a great poem to begin the book with, I believe. And then "The Boatman," which I remember this poem when it was in Poetry Magazine a few years ago. I remember encountering the poem and reading it maybe 10 times in a row. I sat and kept rereading the poem. I think it may be my choice for the poem of the book, Like anybody needs my choice, but that one might be mine.
What about it draws you to it?
It's spoken by somebody who must be, as we learn at the end, a taxi driver, but I think of refugees coming across, the ocean or seas or whatever, in that part of the world, many of them capsizing and that kind of stuff. And I think, is this the one that mentions Aleppo? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's that kind of stuff in recent years that we've all been attentive to, I think. But the opening, we were 31 souls, he said. I mean, that just draws you right in.
Yeah.
We were 31 souls, he said, in the gray sick of sea, in a cold rubber boat, rising and falling in our filth. By morning, this didn't matter. No land was in sight. All were soaked to the bone, living and dead. And that's just sobering
Mhm.
and and a little hard to take, to imagine, to put your mind there. It goes on from there. I mean, this is what I take to be this taxi driver who's telling this story. What lay behind us, well, I guess I'll continue. We could still float, we said, from war to war. I mean, I guess they're leaving someplace, but the place they end up may not be any better. What lay behind us but ruins of stone, piled on ruins of stone. And the poem that precedes this one is all about stones. And in fact, that image is multiple places in the book. A city called Mother of the Poor, surrounded by fields of cotton and millet. A city of jewelers and cloak makers, with the oldest church in Christendom and the sword of Allah. If anyone remains there now, he assures, they must be utterly alone. There's a hotel named for it in Rome, 200 meters from the Piazza di Spagna. I don't know the pronunciations here. Where you can have breakfast under the portraits of film stars. There the staff cannot do enough for you. But I'm talking nonsense again, as I have since that night we fetched a child, not ours, from the sea, drifting face down in a life vest, its eyes taken by fish or the birds above us. After that, Aleppo went up in smoke, and Raqqa came under a rain of leaflets warning everyone to go. Leave, yes, but go where? We lived through the Americans and Russians, through Americans again, many nights of death from the clouds. And that image of clouds is in multiple places in the book.
Mhm.
Mornings surprised to be waking from the sleep of death, still unburied and alive with no safe place. Yeah, there's a phrase to underline, no safe place. That's this book. Leave, yes, we'll obey the leaflets, but go where? To the sea to be eaten, to the shores of Europe to be caged, to camp misery and camp remain here. I ask you then, where? You tell me you are a poet. So now she's in the poem, I guess.
Mhm.
You tell me you're a poet. If so, our destination is the same. I find myself now the boatman driving a taxi at the end of the world. I will see that you arrive safely, my friend. I will get you there. I don't know. There's something about that it's very understated, but it's almost as though whatever danger might have existed of crossing a sea in a boat, now you're on land. Not really. The whole world is this kind of passage,
Mhm.
and there's no safe place to stand. It's like that little there's a little small poem published in a literary journal back in the 1980s, Plain Song. Yeah, the literary journal Plain Song, which published out of Kentucky. I can't remember the poem, but it was something like, asked what poetry was. He said, saving the lighthouse, not just for the people, not just for the boats, but for those on shore who think they're safe.
Hmm.
I may not be quoting exactly, but when she has a poem about a lighthouse. Uh, that's another good one too.
Well, I think this poem also lends itself simply because of the title to the idea of Karen, you know, and that whole safe passage taking you from this life to the next life.
Right.
But then it's like, well, what if the next life isn't, you know? So you've got, if you take it from the actual physical, what is now, to the mythical, and then you read it again, you're just thinking, wow, that's a whole nother level.
Mhm.
Because that's how I was reading it at first. And then when I
Yeah.
saw actual city names, I was like, okay, so she's not meaning this to be mythological. Because, you know, as soon as I saw the boatman, I immediately thought Karen.
That's, yes.
Well, that's the beauty or the perfection perhaps of that title. You know, like if it weren't titled that, it might not have exactly that kind of echo. But yeah, I think almost anybody would read the title, and that's already part of how they step into the poem.
Right. Especially when the first line is, we were 31 souls, he said, in a gray
Yeah.
sea. So yeah, I mean, it's almost like she's misdirecting us. Not here, but there. And again, it could be there.
Mhm. And then, you know, it moves from that poem to water crisis. Another really fine poem.
Yes.
You know, now that I'm looking at water crisis on page 7 and 8, I know the ending of it is this. It's mentioned the stuff about roof to roof in the conclave, cistern to cold cistern. They have seen to it. The rich will have what they want. Is this a relief? The last cloud is empty. The first death, reason enough. I thought I was trying to understand whether she meant the last cloud as in at some point in human history there won't be any more rain. There'll be a last cloud and it'll be empty. Like, is that what she's getting at? I don't know. But I mean that was my thought as I read it the first time. And that may not be anything that anybody else thought as they read.
I had difficulty with this poem. I've got a big question mark on it. So I know it was one that I was like, I don't know.
I suppose if you're thinking about like, okay, water crisis and climate issues and who gets water and who doesn't, and what's sinking and what isn't, and what's washing ashore, and are we going to make it across? And there's a lot of that kind of stuff in this book. I mean, the opening of it, they have cut off the water in the sinking metropolis. Do not wash clothes, bathe only with small buckets. Meanwhile, cisterns on the roofs of the rich send it singing through the pipes of the better houses. So I guess the rich are in a position to be in a better position.
Yes.
Well, to collect the water.
Yeah. And until there's a last cloud and it's empty.
Well, there's like a disparity of power here, right? So we have this rich people who have the water and this better position and better houses. And then these other people who can't wash their clothes. And I mean, I can see that throughout the whole book,
Mhm.
this kind of power, who has power, who doesn't.
And I liked in this one the way birds were used. Oh, you know, there's an old Scottish song. I forget who did it. There were roses. Oh, it was about the when the troubles were in Ireland. Actually, I guess it was an Irish song, but there was a line that said something like, those who make the wars are not the ones to die. It's Scott and MacDonald and the likes of you and I. Because someone who was a friend was killed, so another boy was killed just because of his religion. And they were talking about another eye and another eye till every eye is blind in the song. And they're the Gamecocks. The Gamecocks have the knives strapped, taped to their feet. Oh, they don't have a choice. They transport the cocks in baskets covered by plastic bags, their entire lives tethered to the ground, trapped in wicker until they're angry enough. And the other places where you had the motor scooters, like a murmuration of starlings. Oh, they do that murmuration when they're looking for food. Oh, we lived on a house on a hill, and they came down on all those trees with a cackling, and then they swarmed back up again in a swoop, and the trees were empty of the little seed pods. I just it's not a dance for beauty, it's a dance for survival. A murmuration. Oh. And what happens to the Gamecocks keeps on going until they're angry enough. And then she goes back to the water. The rich will have what they want. And she ends at the first death, reason enough. So I really thought she was looking at what happens and why people have revolutions in so many of the countries where well, Syria.
You have a good memory, Alice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you for
No, I
putting
have
the
a
lyric
random
up there, KB.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow.
Well, as we go on, as 13 and 14, where the light keeper and then the crossing, I think those are a couple of kind of standout poems as well. I had to look up the Tower of Hook. Maybe it made a little bit more sense after that, but it's like a 12th century construction, right? You say to me, stay awake, be like the lens maker who died with his lungs full of glass. Be the yew and blossom when bees swarm, be there, Amber Cathedral, and even the ghost of Cistercians, Cistercians, I don't know how to say it. Cistercians will be
Sturgeons,
kind to you. And then at the end, go toward the light always, be without ships. I mean, and maybe the lighthouse maybe it makes sense that a poem like that would be in this book, because there is the ocean or seas or bodies of water, crossings, and it's a world of different kinds of dangers that exist, and of course the interplay of dark and light that happens through many poems.
So you're talking about the Tower of Hook that's in Ireland, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she has a lot of Irish stuff
Mhm.
that you wouldn't expect. I mean, I didn't expect it from her. There's one that's called The Bridge that sounds exactly like the Carricker Reed Rope Bridge, which is in Northern Ireland. And that poem is on page 47, but yeah, she's got a lot of,
Mhm.
and I don't know. I kind of like that it's not necessarily specific, that she doesn't tell me that something is Irish. But then again, I feel I also want to know so I can be better informed, because I'm reading through a bridge and I'm thinking, oh, that's, and I didn't even catch the Tower of Hook until you specifically pointed it out. And I was like, wait, that's in Ireland. And then I just looked it up and I was like, yeah, that's in Ireland. And then so I thought, well, that's going to make me read this poem completely differently, because I'll have Ireland in my mind. But, maybe she doesn't want me to. And that's why it doesn't say, Irish lighthouse or something.
Some of the books that we've read in this group, obviously not all of them, but seems like several of them have had a section of notes at the back.
yeah.
So maybe we're just kind of getting used to that. I kept turning back.
Yeah.
She
There'd be
doesn't
some
have
mystery,
any
or
stuff.
there'd be a little bit of mystery about a poem, and I would turn to the back thinking, well, but there might be something about it back here. I found myself doing that enough times that I kind of chuckled to myself. I do think the crossing on page 14, that was a poem that really stopped me, and the ending of it is incredibly rich, I think. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to do the teacherly thing and try to dissect the whole poem, right? I wouldn't want to do that, but
But
there's
you really
part.
do want to do that.
Yeah. I was like, who am I kidding? I was like, I felt I'm being drawn to the light. But at the very ending, it says, if there were no cattle, horses, or sheep to be sold, they would take people whose passage had been paid and whose forfeit put up. Our papers were in order, and we had the passage and forfeit to board. They gave us drinking water, but shut off all water at night. 2 weeks of the rocking boat and stink of buckets, all of us asleep on planks. Such rise and fall, such pitch of the ship. But some nights on deck, holding the rails for all her life, she said she plowed the sea as she once had the fields, and into the furrows of light went the seeds, and the black-winged waters fell upon them. Whoa! Oh, that's just that's just what an image! What a wonderful close to that poem. Well, I mean, but the thing is, it's the word seeds, right?
Yes.
All right, so you can't plant seeds on the water, but in other poems, well, somebody has died upon that water. That's not exactly the same thing as a seed, but something has been seeded.
Dreams.
Yeah. It's just, and then if you take the boatman who's a taxi driver on land, what is the real difference between the land and the water? You know, where are we really? And this, is this an imaginative thing that she does at the end, holding the rails for all her life? She said she plowed the sea. I mean, is this effort to remain who one is, within really either kind of adverse or maybe even unconscionable situations, that what people have to do in the world sometimes to survive, even though there's a lighthouse, go toward the light. But
Just because you can see the light doesn't mean it's easy to get there.
no, and maybe if we turn the page, we just find out we're exiles anyway.
Right.
I mean, what country are we in? There is no country.
Well, I think she's moving you into more hope than that. It's everything's very painful, but there's a poem, 66, 67, called Morning, like Mourning, and
Yeah.
she ends it with, for if the earth is a camp and the sea an ossuary of souls, light your signal fires wherever you find yourselves. Come the morning, launch your boats. And
Yeah.
light your signal fires is like, I don't know. Again, we're going back to dumb things from my memory, but when I was a kid, there was a song, Brighten the Corner Where You Are. It was an old church song. And basically it was, do what you can do. Light your signal fires wherever you find yourselves. And then come the morning, launch your boats. She's saying, I think, don't be afraid. Oh,
Yeah, this was the poem that I think was one of the most outstanding for me. In the middle of it, for the breadth of an hour, it is possible to consider the waters of this sea wine dark, to remember that there was no word for blue among the ancients, but there was the whirring sound before the oars of the great triremes sang out of the seam of the world.
through pine-sieved winds, silvered by salt flats until they were light enough to pass the breath from the heavens, troubled enough to fell ships and darken thought. Then, as now, the clouds pass, roosters sleep in their huts, the sea flattens under glass air, but there's nothing to hold us there. Yeah, it's just,
And again, that very complex sentence structure, I think, adds to the poem's power. Because all of that's one sentence.
KB, we've been in Ireland and other places. But is it page 17, fisherman? Isn't the Neva? I guess that's how you say that. I had to look that one up too. It's a river in Russia.
It's in Russia, yes.
So yeah, I mean, this is an aspect of this book I really that really matters to me, I guess. I mean, it's no secret I read poets from all over the world, so I like the idea that the poet is writing and touching all of these places,
Right.
because I mean, maybe, well, I assume probably, I mean, she's already traveled to so many places, especially early in life, that kind of helped to kind of launch her into the national stage. So I assume she's still traveling lots of places. So I think I'm safe in assuming these are part of her experiences anyway. But yeah, what's it going to be like in 50 or 100 years if there is more of all the books, all the souls whispering to each other across all the globe? I mean, Seamus Heaney is as much a part of my world as V. Wallace and Borska, or Tomas Transtromer, or Rene Char, Edmund Jobs, Job, French writer. I'm just all over the place. Not to mention the Blaga Dimitrova, Hungarian poet, just everywhere. There's fantastic authors, but these places, which are not really maybe as remote to us or mysterious to us as they have been in recent decades, are coming into our consciousness.
Yeah.
And we will eventually, or the future poets will just reach out and touch all of them. And she's already doing that.
So this poem, this book it is global, but there's a lot of water and crossing of that water with bridges and, fishermen, boatmen. There's a lot of water imagery. And now I can't find the poem that has the title of the book in it. But why do you guys think this collection is called In the Lateness of the World? I mean, if I were putting this book together, I would have gone totally with something water crossing based because of what the contents.
Yeah.
So I'm interested if anybody can find where the title comes from.
It says in the notes, the title of this collection is from Robert Duncan's poem, Poetry, a Natural Thing.
So she doesn't actually use
I don't think she does.
that line, because I was looking for the line. Normally there's it's
Right, yeah,
if it's not one of the poems, it's usually a line in one of the poems.
right.
So thoughts about the title of this collection then. So do we need to read Robert Duncan's poem to understand that? I did not even see that particular thing.
Well, it's always good to read another poem, so I'm going to vote yes.
Did anybody else question the title of the collection?
No, but the cover, I don't know if anybody's a Hayden Carruth fan, but
Oh, yeah.
one of my favorite poems is his poem about being jealous about the old Chinese poets. And he ends it with that, tell me again how the white heron rises and flies across the nacreous river and they're living out something at twilight toward the distant islands. But
Yeah.
it's the same feeling that I get with her poems that I get from that poem.
Mm.
And I don't know, you know, I'll admit herons have been showing up over the past year, but you know how things do that. But at the same time, it's always, it felt like an odd coincidence.
Yeah, I thought the title to me kind of meant that it was apocalyptic. It's, to me, it was almost like she was looking on the world from above, and she saw that these are the last days,
Yeah.
which is biblical, I guess. So,
Okay,
Which is
so-
maybe a reason for the water, you know, upon the
and,
face of the void and the,
and the bridge, and yeah, okay.
So let me just
Um,
read.
The
let me read
stanza that she
Robert Duncan's
has,
poem.
that she's pulled this from, I've put the poem in the chat,
You found it?
but it's the stanza that starts, "This beauty is an inner persistence." River.
I'm trying to.
oh, you're going to share it,
Let
Sandy?
you-
My internet keeps going off and on, y'all,
Oh.
so you're frozen
Yeah,
all the time.
Mine too.
Oh,
So I'm
okay,
not,
okay.
do we want to
The
read
beauty-
it?
Okay,
This
I found
beauty
it.
is an inner
Yeah.
persistence toward the source striving against, within down rush it of the river, a call we heard and answer in the lateness of the world, primordial bellowings from which the youngest world might spring.
Mm.
That is incredible. And that goes to what Helga was saying, you know, destruction, rebirth kind of idea.
Yeah, well, there's, you know, beginning the book with the idea of stones, and I didn't really think to, I mean, now that we're just talking about this, I didn't go through the book trying to find all the references to stones, but it seems like there are ruins, and so in the lateness of existence or the world's history, or, you know, war torn, displacement,
Mhm.
ruins, you know, the title makes a sense to me. Hmm. It's a
After
different
reading
kind
where, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's a different way to think about a throughway thread through the fullness of the book. I guess I was paying a little bit more attention to images like clouds or water, land. I don't know, almost, yeah, those things kind of playing out through the book. But there are lots of ruins and stones, and maybe if the world is in its lateness, um, are we gonna are we getting ready to cross over? So,
Having read Robert Duncan's poem very quickly, I might add, just trying to get it, I completely appreciate the title of it and how it relates to what she's written here. And it also lends itself to those whisperings we were talking about. You know,
Mhm.
here's somebody else you need. Of this.
Interesting.
You know, the poem, oh, go ahead, Alice. I'm sorry.
I was just reading the ending of the Duncan poem with the moose, the forlorn moosey faced poem wears new antler buds. The same, a little heavy, a little contrived, is only beauty to be all moose.
Yeah.
That poem very much. I'm glad you found it.
I was looking at the poem on page 70 toward the end. So in the lateness, well, we have the end, which you'd almost expect to be the last poem of the book, right? Toward the end.
Well,
No, it's toward the end
Toward
because
the
there's
end,
another
not
one. There's
me.
another poem that's
it's the
coming after that one.
penultimate.
Yeah. But I mean, this is a really interesting poem. In this archipelago of thought, a fog descends, horns of ships to unseen ships, a year passing overhead, the cry of a year not knowing where, someone standing in the aftermath. Even that word aftermath is like a perfect word. It seems like a lot of what her poems are about are aftermaths.
Yeah.
In the aftermath, who once you knew, the one you were then, a little frisson of recognition. And then just like that, gone, and no one for hours. A sound you thought you heard, but in the waking darkness is not heard again. 2 sharp knocks on the door. Death it was, you said, but now nothing. The islands, places you have been, the sea, the uncertain, full of ghosts calling out, lost as they are. No one you knew in your life. The moon above the whole of it, like the light at the bottom of a well opening in iced air, where you have gone under and come back, light, no longer tethered to your own past. And were it not for the weather of trance, of haze and murk, you could see everything at once, all the islands, every moment you have lived or place you have been, without confusion or bafflement, and you would be one person. You would be one person again.
Again.
Oh, and even the word one person, it's still, I don't know, it almost has a sense of whole, like you'd be whole again. You'd be one, as opposed to fragmented or something like, but I don't know if I'm reading that correctly.
Yeah.
She's channeling Walt Whitman here because until the very last line, that's all one sentence. And so, so again, the title toward the end, it's not one sentence, it's almost one sentence with a little bit more to come. And then we have that next poem too. And this is one that I have heavily destroyed my book for, according to you, Jeff.
Okay.
This is another one that there's so
I prefer the
much
term defaced.
in it. Defaced.
You've defaced your book.
I have well loved this poem.
Oh, that's even better. Yeah. But I love that idea of you could see everything at once. And in a book that is, as we've already said, kind of maybe global, it's already not everything at once, but every place, perhaps. What would it be like to have a mind that is every place at once? Well, obviously, I guess that would be omniscience. Hey, that would be good. It would be even better.
We are channeling the beginning and the end again, I guess.
Yeah.
Did that remind anyone else of Odin? He gives his eye to drink from the well. And after that, he has knowledge.
Mm.
Who do you think the you is? The you that keeps showing up in the poems?
Oh, good question. Interesting. I mean, are you saying that you think there's a particular kind of you throughout the book,
I
or
don't know.
different?
I'm curious.
The you in this one, I thought, was kind of a universal you. Who
I
wants
think-
to you? The
Yeah, I
one
think
before
that's kind
them.
of how I was feeling about it in association with the whole idea of the global location, you know, the locations being so much everywhere. The you would also be everyone.
Hmm.
But maybe not. Maybe it's the people who have gone through this, or the reader specifically, or her speaking, you know, or the speaker speaking as
Yeah.
second person.
Well, like in the poem, one of my favorite poems is on 52, Tapestry. You
Mhm.
seems to be a very specific
Yeah.
person. I think
Yes,
it's a
that is a specific
beautiful
person.
poem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that one too, Sandy. I like the quiet as plums turning. That's in the sort of at the first quarter of the poem, but then the plums show up in the second to the last line again.
Yeah.
I like that.
Ripened plums, yeah. KB, I have the same lines marked.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're friends and we know each other.
I think we know each other.
I think y'all collaborated and cheated.
And
Somebody's
this is
looking
a
off somebody
poem,
else's homework.
this is a poem about ruins and about misplacement and war, and so all those same themes,
Mhm.
but very specific. And I'm just so curious as to who this you, is it someone that she knows? Is it a relative?
Yeah.
We could ask her if she was here.
See, I think I thought it was her mother for some reason, and I don't know now why I thought that.
And there's a play, Cathedral of Saint Justice
Just, yeah.
is in France. Is that right? I'm just curious.
Hmm. Well, maybe it's in Germany because Brecht wrote about it. I don't know, but I don't know.
It's a Roman Catholic church located in the town of Narbonne, France.
France, yeah. Okay.
Oh, wait, hang on.
There may be
No,
more. to
sorry,
come.
it sent me somewhere else. Sorry. It keeps pulling up Narbonne Cathedral. Is that the same thing?
Maybe. Does it have a
Cathedral?
wall of suffering souls?
Hmm.
Is that a?
Well, I mean, so that's interesting. That's another country. We've got Russia, Ireland, France,
Italy,
Um,
got Italy too.
Italy?
Italy.
Yeah.
So
Greece.
is it page 43, ashes to Guazapa? I think I looked that up. It was El Salvador, I think.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a wonderful poem, Ashes, on page 43. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a rich book. It was, when we picked these some months ago, a year ago, whatever this was, Sandy, we picked all of the books. And this one, I don't know if you know, I assume you do. It was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize.
Wow.
So
And
it
it won
makes-
the American Book Award.
okay.
Well, it should have.
It should have won, yes.
And didn't it say somewhere, this is her first poetry book in
17 years.
17 years? Yeah, something like that.
Well, let's see, the Blue Hour, I think, was the last one.
When did that come out?
So yeah, I'm sure that's
It-
true. 2003. Wow, I don't think I realized it'd been that long.
And this was 2020. This is a 2020 book.
Yeah.
Well, she used that time well.
Yeah, that's great. All right.
Wow.
All
Yeah.
right.
Well, I think it's wonderful when such a well-known poet, but she only has a smattering of books, I think 5 or 6 at most, from what I've read. Could that be true?
She has a
Yeah.
memoir too about her.
Oh, okay. She
and
may have
also
other
for-
books. Anyway, I looked at that and I thought, wow, she really must be good for being so well known. And she is very good. I mean, she's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, this is her 5th book.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I saw her read at Austin Peay State University. I forget what year, 1987 or 88. I was a student there from 86 through 1990, and she was among the first. Well, actually, she was among the very first poets that I ever saw give readings. And I got introduced to some stellar poets as an undergraduate, and she was one of them. And I very, very much remember being blown away by this reading of hers.
Did she read The Country Between Us? Or which book was she reading?
Yeah, I guess, well, I mean, it would have been poems from The Country Between Us and Gathering the Tribes, and it wouldn't have been The Angel of History because that didn't come out until much later. So really just her first 2 books were under her belt, so to speak. And I've often thought about that, like the first poets we encounter, whoever, and you guys have your own stories about this as well, but the first poets you encounter, especially for, say, someone like me who had really no experience, coming from a small rural town in Tennessee and where poetry was practically non-existent, and then coming to a college where I'm encountering poets, it was just really phenomenal, eye-opening to me, as was Mary Oliver and William Stafford and other poets that I saw read in my undergraduate years. Sharon Olds
Yeah.
was another one. Wow, they're just some of the best. And I do, I never really want to make these kinds of pronouncements, but I mean, I've always loved her work. And in fact, these kind of middle books, or what I think of as the middle books, Blue Hour and The Angel of History, they seem so much bigger, like bigger books in terms of complexity and depth compared to her. Not that her first books aren't good, but I liked that development, and then it'd been all these years. I mean, I hope she wrote other books and go ahead and publish those too. But I think this book is one I'm going to live with for quite a while. I reread a lot of things over and over anyway, but this one has, it's not like, hey, there are 3 or 4 or 5 poems that are worth purchasing this book. This one's got a lot more than that that are worth the price of entrance. So there's always that.
Yeah.
All right, next month, we have this book,
I pick up, right?
Mhm.
Victoria Chang, Obit.
Oh, obit. Okay.
This is an interesting book.
Yeah.
Really, it will be different than what we've read this year. Because all the
Wow.
poems are obituaries.
Oh,
You know, I was just looking at Wikipedia just to see, she actually has published a lot more, just not always poetry. And she
Yeah.
did that wonderful anthology too. But
Against Forgetting.
yeah. But the entry was saying that her grandmother had been a resistance fighter against the Nazis and had been imprisoned by them in Czechoslovakia,
Really?
and that she used a lot of family stories from her Slovak families.
hmm.
That makes sense.
So maybe that's some of the you,
Yeah.
is those family members.
Mhm.
You know this book, Alice?
The Arrival? No, I don't.
Um,
Whose is it?
Daniel Simcoe. I think he's one of the translators of George. Is it Trackle? Is that how you say his name?
Marco? Yeah,
Trackle.
yeah.
And there's Carolyn Forche wrote an introduction to this book, and edited it, I guess, after his death. But yeah, I've had this book for, well, this came out more than a decade ago, 2009. And I think as I was reading this, I remembered that and went and found the book. So yeah, I mean, she's been busy with other things,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, you probably heard me say this before, but I think it was a story someone told to me that Donald Justice, toward the end of his life, had said, "I wish I'd written more poems." And but he didn't say he wished he had published more poems.
Oh.
That's not, it's not exactly the same thing. So, maybe she's written lots of poems, but we may or may not see them. But
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. So it's November 16th. Victoria Chang.
All right.
thanks,
Right.
everybody. This is really
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
you guys put this
Thank you,
together.
Sandy.
Me too.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Bye, KB. KB, I'll see you tomorrow.
No, Thursday.
Oh, tomorrow is when I get so confused with days. Oh my goodness, I'm really getting old.
But I'll see you then.
Yeah, because I've been thinking it felt like Wednesday.
All right.
Full moon tonight. Is it tonight? I think the
Okay.
full moon is tonight. Enjoy.
Oh, yeah.
Church
Moon is
tonight,
gorgeous.
it's supposed to be the biggest and best, I think, 10 o'clock tomorrow night.
Okay,
Okay.
tomorrow night. Okay.
Oh,
One
okay.
more day of torture at school. Got it. Thanks.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
We'll see ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Another
I guess you
successful
can stop.
book club.
You can stop recording now.
Thank you.